everyone, and welcome to another episode of everyone's favorite leftist sports podcast, Beyond the Red Zone. Feeling good today for some odd reason. My very, very, very good friend, my best friend in the whole world, uncle to my children, William Liu, is supposed to be joining us today. And he is late. He is stuck. So we're waiting for Will, but we do have the normal crew. Before I bring in the crew, we have another special guest. I'm actually very honored to have this brother on. We got Big Waz. So this is going to be a star-studded event. So let's bring in the crew. Marcus of the Left Flank Vets.
What's up? What's going on? Happy to be here. Hello, chat. What's up?
So here, before we bring Mac in, I do want to say this. I did this thing 2 years ago when I was doing the show all by myself. And one night I had woke up. This is actually to Waz too. This is a shout out to Waz too. I know he is a hip hop head. I woke up. I didn't even wake up. I was up very early. This is back when I was still living in the studio and I could make a lot of noise. And I used to have this we had a massive recording setup. So when we did playback in the room, we had like subwoofers and stuff. So it was like a loud playback, right? And I think I had been recording something. I think that's why I was up. And I was thinking about what was making me want to record this thing that I had done. And like even another band had came in from another room at like 1 something because they were loading stuff in from a gig they had played. And they heard me playing stuff back. They were like, dude, what is that? Oh shit, that's hella sick. Da-da-da-da-da. So I was like, I was trying to write something else when I wrote this tune and it didn't sound anything like what I was trying to write. And I was thinking about what are the 10 songs I wish I wrote? And I made this playlist and I did a whole show based around 10 songs I wish I wrote. Not my favorite 10 songs, but just 10 songs I wish I wrote. And they're for various reasons I wish I wrote these songs. Sometimes it's the words in the songs, it's the changes in the song. Sometimes it's the mood of the song.
I already know where you're going with this, but I'm way ahead of you.
I want people out there. I tweeted it out and I made a little playlist. I want to see everybody else's playlist. It's actually one of the fun things I used to do with the show that sadly I no longer do. We really don't have time to do it. Is I used to have guests make a playlist of 10 songs that were the soundtrack to their revolution. And I would get the weirdest playlist back from people, man. Because, my 10 songs is 10 songs that just sounds like pots and pans in a dryer, right?
Yeah.
And you get stuff back from people. It's a lot of hippie shit. I'm like, oh, word?
What?
I love to hear.
And the song that I shared with you earlier, you're about to say that you regret not being able to write that song as well. Yeah.
No, that song to me sounds like what happens when people that like the idea of rap and all they know is like Christian rap and Will Smith.
Well, it's like Lin-Manuel Noriega.
Yeah. Like
what's
I went
his
and
name?
saw Hamilton. Yeah, like the guy that went and saw Hamilton and was like, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yes.
That's what that is. So Will has joined us. I see him in the virtual green room. Will could probably embarrass the hell out of me. And if he did, I wouldn't feel bad because he has every right to, because he has so many stories about me fucking up in a studio or them yelling at me about, no, Jason, they have to end on even beats.
Damn. Like the fucking music teacher.
There was a point, and it's still to this day, and I want everyone listening to know this, that 2 people are my constant motivation, and that is William Liu and another person that was in our group, Kevin Patterson, because one day I tried to touch the ASR, and Will and Kevin goes, don't even bother. They told me don't even bother. That's how bad it is. And Will is also the reason why I can't use chopsticks because he says he doesn't remember this. He grabbed him out of my hand and threw him across the room and told me never to use chopsticks again because he said, hold it like you hold a pencil. I was holding like I hold a pencil. He goes, no, hold it like you hold a pencil. I'm holding like I hold a pencil. He goes, that's how you hold a pencil? And he threw him. So I'm just setting the stage for what you're gonna get here with Coach Lou.
That's how you.
And coming all the way live from parts unknown in North Carolina, he is the return of the Mac.
What's up, everybody? Hope everybody's well.
You got to make sure you lean in on yours to make sure you look so we can see that beautiful face, Mac.
Oh, my beautiful face.
Yes.
There's a. You mean like this?
Oh.
Here, let's bring in Big Waz right now, and coming all the way live from somewhere, I believe on the West Coast. He's a West Coaster now, and I have to give him shit because I used to watch him go on Michael Brooks' show, just dogging the West Coast. I'm like, you know what, Waz? I'm gonna take you to Oakland. Me and Will finna take you to Oakland. And you're gonna have so much fun around white people that now live in Oakland. Big Waz.
What's going on, fellas? It's an honor to be here, man. I listen to damn near every episode. Pascal's been on our joint a couple of times,
Yes.
but it's my first time coming on with you guys, so really excited. And yes, I'm now a Los Angeles native. I've been here for 5 years in September. It'll be 5 years, and yeah, the like 15-year-old me who was the arrogant New Yorker. New York is the center of the universe. We're better, smarter, well-dressed, more than we think we're the best people ever. Yeah, I would be sick of this person that I've become today with these green juices and this yoga mat in the apartment. It is an embarrassment to my former self who I've become.
You know what's fucked up? When Waz had to let go of them Timbs in the summer.
That's it. When was the first time you're like, I didn't need to wear these?
He looked at the Timbs. He looked at the
funny ass
Timbs
story.
again.
Like, I want to say maybe because I moved in September of 2017, I would have bought these Timbs in like March, right? And I bought these. I went to a Timberland party, and they gave out gift cards. So I had $200 gift card to Timberland, and I bought like premium leather Timbs. And I packed them sons of bitches to move to LA, and I've never worn them. I have no idea where these Timbs are. It's just disgraceful.
Oh, you can't go back to New York. You can't go back to New York.
Waz, there was a Timberland outlet in Napa, California. I don't know if it's still there. And I remember when I was dating my first wife, this was in the 90s. This was 97. I had got a paycheck, and there was these dope low-cut Timbs, and it was the all-weather waterproof motherfuckers. And I had them Timbs, and I would make sure the baggy jeans hit them just right, so you had enough of the fold on the bottom. And I was like, God, motherfucker. So I mildly know what you mean, but only mildly.
I packed those boots like, no, these boots are too fire. I can't. I'm like, I'll have some occasion to where I don't even know what those things are anymore. Like, to be like, I don't even know where they're at. That's how far removed from the gritty, gritty gray city, New York, the bricks, the concrete jungle. That's how far removed I am from it.
Are you in the valley?
I am in the valley. I am in the valley. I am speaking to you from the San Fernando Valley.
Oh,
middle of the suburbs. I could get a falafel right now.
Me and Will will tell you
I can get a falafel next door. That's how valley I am right now.
Our first, let's bring in Coach, my best friend, right in the world. I've done so much awesome shit with this guy. Got into so much trouble with this guy. Made so much music with this guy. He was there for the birth of the majority of my kids because I have so many baby moms. He is my good friend,
Jason Miles, Cannon.
Will.
Got my people on the run. Got my people on the
run. To this day, man, every time I got to end something, I'm like, you guys never let me forget that. Come on, Jay.
You got a 16-bar verse and you wrote 13 and a half. Just say a bunch of stuff until it fills it out.
Will.
Yes, sir.
Meet the gang.
How's my sound? I'm like literally just like.
Do you have COVID?
Nah, I just we got in last night around 1.
Mm-hmm.
Got everyone home, slept, woke up, slept again. So I literally just rolling out of bed.
Well, you sound fine. I've been congested for a whole week because I had that damn COVID vaccine. It put me on my ass. But today, I wanted to talk about something that you were talking about when we spoke briefly, and that was. And have you written about this, Woz, in the Athletic?
No, because my focus is so NBA driven. Like I really never talked about anything that wasn't just straight up NBA stuff. The sort of what they call grassroots basketball. That's never been my beat, but it's something I pay a decent amount of attention to because again, like that's where these guys come from, right? Like they come from that culture of, club teams, if you will. That's what they call them in other sports. Yeah. Basketball is just AAU. But yeah, I pay attention to it for sure.
But actually, before we get into that, I did want to talk about something because I do want you to understand something. Was as a LA person, the Lakers are trash. And it's all about the Dubs, Dub Nation, Bay Area in the bitch.
Yeah, congrats to the Dubs on the championship. Are you a Dubs fan, Will?
Not at all.
No.
I mean, I'm connected to them. I actually speaking of Tim's, one of my former players that he's like one of the cameramen for the Warriors now. He's had a picture with the trophy and all that type of stuff. But when he was a freshman in college, he went out to New York and decided, hey, I'm a basketball head. Let me go to, I think at the Rucker. It wasn't like an event. It was just like a random day to play pickup at the Rucker. And it was like 5-6 guys in the middle of summer with Tim's, jorts. and so my kid hit a jumper and they're like, yo, son, what you doing? What you talking about? Like, you ain't got no moves, son? Why you shooting these jumpers? Like, what? You gotta shoot them 98 times before you do nothing else. If you don't do no tricks, like,
oh my goodness.
Tim's and jorts and like beanies or whatever.
Very, very, very New York. Dude that probably just got off Rikers Island 3 weeks ago will definitely smoke cigarettes in between points and baskets. And yes, his attire is jorts, a wife beater, or what we used to call wife beaters, a tank top, and Tim's for sure. Steel toe joints.
Jorts. But
jorts that are like borderline culottes, like they down to almost to your ankles.
This is how the conversation between me and Will started. Out of the blue, I asked Will. I said, Will, because first of all, Will, I know you don't keep up with the show, but I called Warriors in 6, and everybody, and I called it after they lost the second time, and everybody was trying to say they were done. I was like, no, Warriors in 6. You'll see. Hearts of champions. Draymond had that look in his eye, as we used to call in radio shows, right? But I asked Will, I said, Will, the Warriors
turnovers by Tatum that last game, Jason. I think that
he was scared on the second win. But seriously, I asked this question, And I would love to get all of you guys' response. I asked Will, I said, Will, did the Warriors change the way the game is played? And Will said, no. And then he gave me a very long 3-paragraph answer. So I'll let you start it off, Will, and then I'll let Waz, and we'll go down the list. So, Will, when I asked you if the Warriors changed the game, you said no. You said the game was changed by Mike D'Antoni.
It's like a 2-part answer. Like, I know all us old heads kind of, wish the days of hand checking and fouling hard, but the biggest change was the illegal defense rule, to where you can load up, play help side, all that type of stuff. So all the ISO players of your Larry Birds, Kobe Bryant's, Michael Jordan's, Carmelo Anthony's the best example. He was his first 2/3 of his career was in the ISO era. And then he was still good at basketball the last third of his career, but the rules changed to where you can't jab step 78 times, shoot a mid-range jumper, and dominate a game anymore. That in conjunction with Mike D'Antoni coming over with the spread pick and roll. Literally, like we played a game this weekend, and we played a team from Idaho that ran about 85 set plays, and they're all great plays, but they all went into the post. And we literally ran spread pick and roll the whole game with no one taller than 6'4", and we beat them by about 10. And I think that was the biggest combination of the rule change, the European concepts of spacing and space and pace, as they call it, and then I believe it was the Heat, the quote unquote Big Three Heat teams, where they broke the record for passes per possession and beat the Spurs. And then the following year, the Spurs broke the previous record of passes per possession and beat the Heat. And then that became a thing where it was like ball movement, player movement, spacing, versus just give your best player the ball and let them dribble 87 times to create a shot, which is, I think, a big cop-out for coaches where it's like, well, you got to let the players play. Well, yeah, but you kind of have to put them in position to, move people, move players, move the ball, and to create shots. So I think those are the two things that change the game. And the Warriors just have a cheat code player, or cheat code players in Steph and Draymond combined that unlocked a whole bunch of things that had never been seen before.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. And I think the Spurs, I think D'Antoni has talked about, my man Amin El Hassan, a close homie of mine, he actually worked for the Suns during 7 seconds, what they call the 7 seconds or less era in Phoenix with Mike D'Antoni and Steve Nash. And he was like, how they knew internally that they had basically won the philosophical war was when the Spurs started playing like them. Like when the Spurs started launching all kinds of threes and basically they mimicked D'Antoni's offense. That's when they knew they were on to something, because the Spurs were known as this, like, fingers in the dirt, in the mud, and physical and all of that kind of stuff. All of those cliches that we talk about, that Will talked about in the beginning of the show, the Spurs were known for that as much as anybody else. And even they saw the wisdom in what D'Antoni and them were doing. So, yeah, Will is right about that 100%.
Can I address one of these questions in the chat thing?
Sure.
Utah did not run a spread pick and roll. They ran a pick and roll where the the 3 defenders guarding the other 3 offensive players
were on the other side of the court.
You have to be within like 10 feet of them. You can't get the help side. So literally when Malone would set a pick for Stockton, if you switch, they throw it in the post. If you don't switch, pocket pass, layup. It doesn't involve, or the 3rd, 4th, and 5th defenders are not allowed to be involved in the play by rule, illegal defense. So the spread pick and roll is more so because of European rules where you're allowed to play help side, you're allowed to zone up or not technically guard a man. It involves those 3rd and 4th defenders. So you take shooters to spread those guys out or make them choose who you have to guard, in simple terms. If you want me to pull out my clipboard, I can draw that.
Well, and this is almost like, because I don't feel qualified whatsoever to have like opinion on the question right now. But I do want to kind of even like piggyback off of what you're saying, Will. Is that, it's like if the rule change, in many cases, like bring it in like broader terms, made basketball into more of like a team sport. Because when you break it down into spacing, ball movement. These are principles of good offense that transcends like the sport of basketball that goes into like
It's the same thing for football and soccer. Yeah.
Yep.
exactly right. That is
Hockey.
just
Yeah.
exactly. It really doesn't matter. And you know, like maybe not football, but like you ever play razzle dazzle? It's like the same shit. You know, like space out, move the ball. That's it.
Mac, I know you have some comments on this.
Yes, I mean I'm with Coach on this one. The change in the illegal defense rules really opened up the game, but I would change it even before D'Antoni. When you started seeing the European players really start being drafted in the first round and weren't just guys that were picked up as free agents, you know, it's kind of like sideshows and they were just there to shoot. But when you saw guys like Nowitzki coming into the league, Peja Stojakovic, you know, I'd say that those early 2000s Kings team kind of played a similar type of ball that Golden State does. They just didn't do it as efficiently. You know, so
Or were they limited? Were they limited by the rules in the era? I'm asking. I don't know.
I mean, I would probably say on one hand, yes, but on the other hand, look at who they had running their offense. As much as I love him play, Jason Williams would go hot for 2 games and then spend the next, you know, week or so of ball games not being able to hit water if he fell out of a boat. You know, then you had Bibby, you know, Bibby rolled through there who was, you know, he was efficient, but he wasn't like a lights out shot. You know, you had Weber, perfect for the game now. He would have been absolutely.
Yeah, he would have. They would have just made Chris Webber play center. Now he wouldn't even be a power forward. He would just be the center on the team. He'd be the worst shooter. He wouldn't be a 4-man these days. They would straight up just been like, nah, we're not putting a big man next to you. We're gonna take advantage of your passing skills and keep it pushing. And I think what Will's talking about too is Thibodeau. When he got to Boston with KG and Ubuntu and all of that dumb shit, he introduced the concept of flooding the zone, or what he would call ice. When he's screaming ice, 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 they would just straight up like LeBron, like, I know you want to play in isolation, but we got 3 guys there, and you're gonna have to give the ball to Boobie Gibson at some point. And they were dominant. They were extremely dominant. And so, yeah, a lot of that isolation heavy stuff, because NBA guys were sort of slow to embrace this idea of zoning up, because zone has always felt like a cop-out defense. It's like what the type of defense you play when you're undermanned, you know, you don't have the athleticism, the size, you zone up on folks, right? And so NBA folks were like, this is college crap. We don't do this until, you know, they saw somebody be successful at it. And Boston went to a championship, obviously lost another finals. Like they were known for what they were doing on defense. And then, you know, finally people figured out like, maybe we should move the ball and spread these guys out and make them have to guard, you know, cover more ground on the court, right? Like there's more shit you have to actually worry about against a spread offense.
I think
I got a real problem when the chat talk about zone is a gimmick and zone is a cop out, because like it just doesn't make any sense. Like you play to win the game, okay?
So can I interject about that? So
Please.
First things, before I forget it, with the Kings of the 80s, early 2000s, offensively they were way ahead of the game, but they couldn't compensate on the defensive end, because on the other end of the floor, you just throw it to Shaq and you can't help, and he's just gonna maul people until he scores 50. Yeah. Or you have to double team super hard, and then now Derek Fisher gets a wide open 3. So when those rules changed, it helped, you know, defensively. And then with the zones, the NBA is the only league in the world that had an illegal defense rule. So it's a different game. And it was created so your stars could be stars and play one-on-one. But that also hurt them internationally when they started, you know, playing a different game. When they go to FIBA, Olympics, you're playing a totally different game, you know.
Now,
so
I'm wondering if you can even like go in, or at least if everyone would go in on that point that you just brought up of like, this was kind of the NBA like overall point was to create individual stars that could be commercialized, right? Heavily
Who's the next Jordan
commercialized
era?
stars.
Would you guys
Yeah.
say this is the next Jordan era where they're trying to find the replacement for Michael Jordan?
What's so funny? The reason why they got rid of the illegal defense is because they were like trying to stop the ISO heavy stuff. Like they're like, guys, this is bogging down our game. The product isn't as pretty. And that's back when we had AI and like that early 2000s to mid 2000s
Low scoring games.
Yeah, where games are ending 77 to 69, and it was kind of disgusting, honestly. And so they changed
It was
up.
dog shit.
What do you have to say about that, Will? Because that was a kind of a bittersweet time for you. So for you guys that don't know, Will's favorite team is the Indiana Pacers.
Oh wow, okay, yeah, the Pacers era.
It was until 2012. Yeah, post 2012 was the Blazers. But
Oh.
no, I mean, I'm really like the opposite of the whole social media sports thing, where like I don't really put value judgments on ranking everything.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate 80s and 90s basketball for what it is. I just wouldn't compare like people don't realize that if you're going to allow Bill Lane Beer to elbow LeBron, well, isn't LeBron able to elbow back? And his elbow is like 80 pounds heavier, So it's like it's different, and it is what it is, Like,
Will LeBron could have never survived the Kurt Rambis foul. Could you imagine?
Kurt Rambis' arm might have pulled out a socket around LeBron's neck. If he really. Kurt Rambis was about 205, 210. LeBron going full speed at 280. If he would have tried to close on him, Rambis might have flipped on his head trying to close on him.
Well, I want to say this because we love talk. Look, the reason why I do this show. And Will's never heard me say this, is because I was driving here to Mexico and my phone died and I heard sports talk radio and it made me angry. I hate it. Was racist. It was ahistorical in their analysis. And I hate the comparing of eras. Because first of all, there's something I heard John Sally say this recently. He goes, every time somebody wants to put someone in the category of GOAT, you start throwing people out. And when I started the show talking about that list of 10 songs I wish I would have wrote, it can change daily. Just like my favorite football players, it's my favorite sport. It's going to change daily. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's hard to say, is Steph Curry better than,
or Bill Russell?
It's just it's a silly conversation. Because the eras are so different. And whenever we talk about great players, like should we be talking about this? And I'm looking at you, Woz, because you do work in sports media where these conversations are fucking click gold. Should we look at certain eras and say, well, maybe this guy is dominating this ball movement era or the 3 era? This is the best player that we're going to see of this 3 era, or is that just not looked at as a conversation people want to have?
Yeah, I mean, to me, in so much as you're going to compare eras, is like, how dominant were you relative to your peers? Like, to me, that's the conversation. I'm not going to get into is like, is DeAndre Ayton just as good as Wilt Chamberlain? I don't think that's a valuable conversation to have, but like, relative to the era, how dominant are you? How often are your teams producing winning outcomes because of things that you directly have your hands on? Yeah, we can do that cross eras, and again, it has to be relative to your peer group, right? But I don't, like I said, I don't think it's useful to be like, oh, Bob Cousy was playing against mechanics and garbage men. Like, He kind of was, but I don't see the utility in that.
Dude, you look at a situation where they start chastising guys like LeBron for changing teams, right?
Yeah.
Magic Johnson signed a 20-year contract.
Yeah. That's exploitative, by the way.
You know,
Yeah.
but like if Cleveland could have signed LeBron to a 20-year contract for $80 million a year, they would have done it because he brings in about, I think they said like 180 a year. It's a great deal, but there's a cap, and so once you hit that personal cap, everything else is going to be like, well, I can control everything else now. The dollar value is insignificant. It's artificially capped. Quick question about can I add a question about racism?
Yes.
Especially Waz, because I think you
racist.
probably are familiar. So yeah, he's racist. You have the whole situation where a couple weeks ago they were saying how the Europeans have taken over the NBA. All the best players are from Europe, and AAU is horrible. This, that, and the other. And you have Giannis, you have Jokic, blah blah blah. Where do they end up? As far as like the finals, the Final Four, like it's all American, black AAU kids, Tatum, you know, all those guys that are at the top of the game. It's basketball. But no, I just was very irritated that no one pointed out how that conversation was so coded in like racism, where they're like I just came from a basketball tournament and it's like, there's some really good American basketball.
Yeah, I think America is still the place that produces the best hoopers, 100%.
Like Boston and the Warriors. Who was the best European player on those two rosters?
Bielitsa. Basically. And you know, this is what I think is happening too, especially like when you think of like a mainstream sort of media perspective. And I made a joke about this on Twitter the other day. I was like, we need to put together some programs for white American hoopers like we do for black Americans in baseball, right? Like, you know how they got all of these programs to bring black folks back to baseball. We need to do that for white Americans, because for whatever reason, white Americans got it in their head that they can't hoop, that they can't compete in the sport, and they just don't play as much as they used to. And I'm just
You
like,
hear
yo,
my theory?
White man
but
can't
this
jump.
is my thing, Jason.
was it.
Like, you look at Nikola Jokic, big old sloppy ass body. I don't see why some white guy couldn't look at him and think, I can do that.
Well,
I
where
can
do you
be
think-
that.
Where do you think all the 6'5" and above white boys are? They're either doing MMA on a high
They
level,
were in Arizona. There was a
Or-
whole bunch of them in Arizona.
or they're playing football at a very high level.
Mm.
Right? We're seeing
They-
football
I think it's
look
'cause
very differently. Football.
They are taking the edge rusher position from us, Jason.
Hey,
The Bosa brothers, etc. They're
It's
taking
gone.
the edge rusher.
who was the
From
number
us.
2 draft pick? That white boy running 4 or 5 40s. Who's
Yeah, they doing
who's
their
the
thing in
fantasy football number 1? Christian McCaffrey, running back.
They still not allowed to play cornerback though.
It's coming. You know why?
Shouts to Jason
Wide
Seymour.
receiver. They're not gonna play
They
wide
can.
receiver.
The best they got is safety. They like the best they can
It's
do is
a
safety.
different. That joke about all white boys are quarterbacks. No, these white boys are edge rushers and wide outs.
Aiden Hutchinson is another one who gets busy. Yeah, it's a few. The Watts brothers.
Those
Like,
dudes
it's a
are
few of
tall.
them,
Those dudes are big cats. I bet you. they
and
play
very
basketball.
The
athletic. too.
Bosas.
I
There
bet
was
you
a-
they play. Did they play basketball, Mac? The Bosas? Do you know?
No, the Bosa brothers
I doubt no.
were specialized. Like, they essentially did what a lot of kids are doing now. They specialize really young. Like, you know, I played
Really?
baseball and football and basketball. They focused on football and started hitting camps and the 7-on-7 leagues, like when they were like in 6th or 7th grade.
Really?
So like that's seeing more and more of that. You know, you kind of like right term, but it seems right. It's there. You have staged. My kid really excelled in football this one season, so we're going to push him into it. We're going to spend going to traveling camps. We're going to get him on these 7-on-7 leagues. You know, we're going to, if they're a defensive player, We'll get him a personal trainer, in middle school.
Mhm.
This is actually happening. It's actually been going on a long time in sports like hockey, lacrosse, literally fluent white kids playing because it was so high because of the equipment, field time, that's right. And they weren't widely funded through the public system. Now are having issues, essentially keeping sports programs running. So they've went the route of asking, more affluent parents to start dumping money, pay to play model. But I mean, you have kids that are starting to specialize in certain sports, in like 5th or 6th grade, man. So the days of you seeing a kid with a multi-sport like Letterman jacket they're over. These kids focus on one thing and that's what they do.
Which, and I don't know, this might even be a good turn into what, kind of the overarching thing that we're talking about too, because Joey Bosa went to St. Thomas Aquinas High School. It's in Florida. And it's like ranked the top 10 for high schools to get like professional athletes, in order to end up as a professional athlete, so like, yeah, so what just goes in the line of like this era of, I mean, yeah, just you get into your lane, your silo, and you hyper focus on that, because that's the thing is like, if you don't, then you're going to be playing against kids and teenagers and then adults that did spend that time like being drilled, and like when they're children, right, like just like starting at children now and going up. And I think this like goes in line too with like the generational athlete, where you get a lot of like kids of professional athletes or kids of like the semi-pros and stuff like that.
The Warriors starting 5, I
The
think everyone on the
gentrification of
starting
youth
5 is their
sports.
dad played, right? But Will,
can you say, what did you say?
You said this to me last year, Will. You said you saw, I don't know if you remember saying this, you saw a change to the point where you figured there's going to be like Europe, there's a class of athlete. It's its own class.
You look at the Warriors, you got Curry, Thompson, Peyton, Wiggins, all sons of former NBA players. The tournament I just came back from this morning, as much as they tried to make it affordable, I mean, it was like literally what, 2 hood schools there. It's like who can afford to, for a summer non-school year situation, take a team to Arizona for a tournament. The tournament fee was, for AAU tournaments, your tournament fees might be $700-800. This tournament fee was only $250, but the plane tickets, the hotels, all that type of stuff. So there was 192 teams that were playing at the State Farm Stadium, and great event. But you look at who's there, and then you look at the have-nots, and it's only going to make the divide wider, because you have Oakland's a great example. Oakland Public School League, 15, 20 years ago, every team had multiple D1 players.
Yes.
6, 7, 4-year scholarship players at any level. And now it's like, the student population in Oakland just has dwindled. Wow. The talent base is dwindled. They're all in, Sacramento, Modesto, the further out areas where the houses are, cheaper. And, I see it in basketball every day, where I get kids that come to Oakland High that have never really played, a decent level of organized ball. And then you see, you go to some of these tournaments, and you got these suburban kids that have, had personal trainers for, strength, agility, another one for shooting, another one for skills, since they were like 9, 10 years old. And
that's, yeah.
I want to ask you about that, Will, because you mentioned Gary Payton. Is the kid on the Warriors the second, or is he junior? Because I know there's like a whole, because he got 2 chicks pregnant at the same time.
Yeah, he's the second.
Okay.
He's the second. The other one's not the other one, but the other one's
So like what you just talked about, Gary Payton Sr., who my man who used to work with him said is the most Bay dude that's ever been in the NBA.
J.R. Riders maybe rival him, but yeah.
He was like, could Gary Payton make it to the NBA today? Like, because Gary Payton ain't have no, strength coach, agility coach, ball handling coach, all of that stuff. Like,
his
could
dad
the
would've
Gary
made it.
Payton of that era, of this era, still get to the league without all of that specialization, skill training stuff?
His dad would have made it happen, but it would have been harder because you would have had, Bill Russell's son and Will, all those children would have had the advantages. So he's not competing against, the regular kids. I mean, you look at like so Dame Lillard is doing an elite camp next month, and you see like CP3 has his point guard camp, LeBron has his elite camp, and Dame is really trying to find under the radar non-blue chip guys for his camp, and he's kind of going out of his way to uncover the next CJ McCollum, Steph, well maybe not so much Steph Curry, but like those type of guys, because he kind of sees the same thing happening where it's like, 10 years from now, is the league going to be, LeBron's son, Melo's son, all those guys are like, what, the Boozer twins? Ooh, Carlos Boozer's two twins at 14 years old.
They get busy?
Cam, I believe, was the one that was like dominating the tournament that we just came from. But there's so many, offspring of former players, WNBA, NBA, D1, and there's still only what 480 jobs or however many jobs there are, 450 jobs in the NBA.
Can you do it yourself? Is it even possible to like be like, I'm a self-starter, I'm a really driven hooper, I don't have the access to these resources? Is it even possible to be a 6'2" dude to just make yourself into an NBA player without help?
Yes, it's just going to be harder and harder, but it's still, if you can hoop, you can hoop. And at the end of the day, like that's one of the things, like going back to this tournament, just because it's so fresh on my mind, like we played against a team that had 5 or 6 guys, 6'6", 6'7" above. My tallest guy is 6'4", and we kicked their ass. But at the end of the day, if you're a college coach, you see a 6'6" kid and you see my 5'6" kid. I have a kid that's 5'6", that's a dog. He's a bull. Like he picks up the full court. He's into the ball the whole game. But if you're making $400,000 a year as a D1 coach, who do you bank your job on? Who do you bank your kid's private school education on? You're gonna go with 6'6", 6'7" guy.
Yeah.
So,
Coach, how at that tournament, charters and private schools were there? What would you say the ratio was?
A lot of private schools. There's a significant handful of like these academies that are like,
like the basketball factories, like the Mount Verdes, or
not so much those, because it's this event was not an AAU event; it was a high school based event. So they're directly affiliated with high school. But there's, whenever something works or there's some type of a little jug, they're always going to try to find a way to exploit every loophole. So there are teams that are like, it's a high school that has like 72 kids, and 15 of them play basketball. Then the other 30 are some type of a special resource where they find a way to get money from the government to keep this thing moving. Like emotional needs kids. Nothing wrong with those schools, I'm saying, but like the basketball component is kind of attached to it, so they can live in that same world but still recruit players or whatever it may be. So, but there are a lot of
it's like IMG Academy down in Florida for football. Literally a feeder system into D1 colleges. That's all it's there for. and you just
IMG is a European-based model. I love
Is it
IMG.
really?
No, I mean, I would like going back to the academy thing I was talking about last time we spoke. Like, I could totally see, especially at the basketball level, where you have some, IMG is the academy in the South. Then you have a similar one on the East Coast, a similar one in the Midwest, similar on the West Coast. And basically, by the time you're 11 or 12 years old, just like in Europe, hey, he's 6'4", his parents played. We need to take him to our academy. So he does, he'll do science, then he'll do weightlifting, then he does math, then he does shooting. And they're by the time you're 14, 15, you get in these, you play on the pro team. And then by the time you're 17 or 18, are you good enough to go to the real pros? And if so, once you get drafted, the NBA team has to pay your academy a fee to take the player. Like the whole overtime. Is anyone familiar with the overtime team in Atlanta?
I'm not.
It's this is the first year they had it. Overtime, which is the big YouTube internet entity. They were building for a few years, and this is the first year they had their team, where they believe it was like 15 or 18 high school kids got contracts to play in that league. And they brought in another like 8 or 10 European kids, split it up into 3 teams, and they would play each other, play other prep school teams, play pro teams. They traveled, and the idea is that they're going to prepare them to be pros. And there's actually an Oakland kid that was a junior. I think he was the only junior that signed with them. He's like a 6'10", elite player. He's top 3 or 4 player in the nation. But that's very similar, where they're like, we're gonna prepare these.
Now, Will, are you at liberty to tell the story out loud that you told me about that school, that college in Oakland college, or you can't say that on there?
Oh, we don't have to talk about that.
Okay. Damn it.
Well, it's a legit school though. It's don't want to like put the college in quotes, but like the sports program is to be determined how that pans out.
I guess this is like a question
stuck with me.
Going off of what Waz was saying earlier, like there was like going forward. I mean, like you're saying it's hard now, but like this model that you're talking about, where these it seemed like even more exclusive, because even with private schools, like there are a lot more other kids that aren't just there to play sports that maybe would want, like there's just more of a pool of people that may be exposed to something. But with these types of like private exclusive academy models, what does that mean for I like just basic like pee-wee sports in general? Do you think is that something that like will largely go away? Will leagues stop funding pee-wee, or at least like kicking down cash for the wider leagues if they can just go directly to these academies and they give me the best player right now? Why waste it on all these scrubs?
How many people are good enough to play in those elite situations?
I have no idea.
Man, it's crazy to think that football is just like the most democratic of all the sports. You know what I mean? Like where you can still make it to the top and be from some back road, backwater, town and not have access to a crazy amount of resources and make it work. And I wonder what they're gonna do in basketball. I think it's nice for the league to have all of these biracial cats, these suburban cats, representing the league. Like these dudes are so corporate ready because they have suburban backgrounds. Like they're just not the GPs. Again, they're not the Gary Paytons of before.
But Waz, I'll even go so much further. And this is the conversation that Will and I, and actually Mac and Marcus and I always have. I think this is a different era in general for young people in general. When it comes to monetizing every aspect of your life, this is Steph Curry is not finna spend his championship downtime on cocaine and loose women.
Dude, who remembers Shabazz Muhammad? Who remembers Shabazz?
I remember Shabazz. He was allegedly the best player in his class, and out of Vegas and all of that. I remember him. He didn't stay in the league too.
He was 18 when he entered college, played 1 year in college, and all of a sudden he was 21. But he was the one where I believe at the rookie symposium. So I think it was like 2010, maybe 2009. At the rookie symposium, he got kicked out for like sneaking girls in, and people were smoking weed, all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
One of the guys that worked with Dame's agent, was telling me how that 2012 class, when they went to the rookie symposium, how like just in that year or two time, things had changed where guys weren't falling. So you have this famous story of Gilbert Arenas during the symposium. They're asking him what he wants to do after he retires. He was like, I want to be a pimp. Right? Whereas the 2012 class, they were saying like a lot of the speakers were taken off guard because at the end of their little presentation, they had asked if anyone had questions. They end up staying for an extra 45 minutes, and players had laptops and notebooks and were actually had questions prepared. You know, no one was getting in trouble. People were super attentive. And I think that's kind of the turning point of you get the Hook Mitchells in the past, where it's like, oh, he's our meal ticket. We're gonna give him hits of coke every time he dunks it in a high school game, versus, hey, he's the next one. We got to insulate him and prepare him as best we can, and cut off his knucklehead friends. Make sure he's doing the right things. And if he doesn't have money for a trainer, let's pull our resources. That's why I said Gary Payton's dad would have found a way to make sure Gary Payton was good, because his dad was, just that type of guy. He was going to make sure, to put his son in the best situation possible, by any means necessary.
What's crazy about what you said about the cocaine and loose women, the summer of 2016, OJ Mayo caught the ban from the league for substance abuse. He was drinking lean. And he tested for it, and I think it was like his third or whatever time tested for it, so they had to ban him. He might be last weekends, man.
I think that era of athlete is done. Like I'm watching the crap talk post, on social media, Draymond and Ja Morant and all these guys.
Yeah.
And that Ja Morant's in the gym right now.
Yeah.
Sure. He's in the backyard right now.
What'd you say?
He's probably in the backyard right now. His dad has a whole neighborhood training thing where they just take pride in going to his backyard. They got all types of bricks and baskets and stuff, and they just do all these crazy outdoor workouts.
Ja Morant is also at the club too. He's doing both. Don't get it twisted. That young man likes to hit the streets. He's doing both. But
before we sign off, we're coming up on an hour. As the show has grown, the show has grown a lot since you first came on here, since I first started doing this. And one of my favorite stories that I can recall is you calling me after you had coached a tournament to tell me about this Chinese dude that you played against. And I remember asking, I was like, do you think he'll make it in the league? And you're like, he might play a couple years. I don't really see him as a starter, though. Like you basically predicted Jeremy Lin's entire career after you had saw him play one game.
There might be some hazy memory on your part, but in high school he was very good. But I mean,
no, you said he was very good, but I asked you if he could make it to the league. You're like,
I wasn't sure if he would get a D1 scholarship, because people got to remember he was maybe about 6 feet, 6'1", 140 pounds in high school. Like even like when Dame graduated high school, he was about 6 feet, 5'11". If those guys didn't grow those extra 2-3 inches, the story of the coaches didn't recruit me. Well, yeah, but Jeremy Lin, his junior year, his team made the state championship, lost to Mater Dei, and he had broken his foot, so he didn't play in the championship game. And the following year, they played Mater Dei again with Taylor King that went to Duke. They were stacked. And
what school was this again? This was a school in
Palo Alto.
Okay.
Palo Alto. They had the exact same team, but Jeremy Lin was healthy, and Jeremy Lin controlled that game. He dominated that game. And I'm like, he's a player. Now, is he going to grow any? With Asian kids, you can't really tell. Like I graduated high school at about 5'5", 5'6". I'm 6 feet, 6'1" now. I was a freshman, 4'10". So Jeremy Lin could have stayed at 5'10", But when he had that extra boost and also being able to play at Harvard, was he at Harvard? Harvard,
Yeah.
where he was allowed to play early. If he would have went to a Stanford and sat at the end of the bench, and then maybe after 1 or 2 years transferred to, Menlo College or something like that, because he wasn't getting playing time, who knows how that story would have ended up. But like, he was a hooper. He was a legit hooper.
I'd never forget that.
I was living in New York when Linsanity happened. That was the craziest time in Knicks. Like, post going to the NBA Finals in 1999, there's never been as much enthusiasm for the Knicks, but for that Linsanity thing. And I remember what was happening. I was like, look, he's not going to make all these shots for the rest of his life, but like, nobody could stay in front of him. He was obviously a really athletic dude. Like, nobody could stay in front of him. That's how he was winning. He was beating dudes off the dribble.
He's a Bay Area guard. He's a Bay Area guard. That's all I got to say. He ain't got the fanciest moves, but he's a tough dude, and he's from the Bay. That's how our guards are out here.
It's funny because whenever I read all this stuff about the new Cold War with China, and then you see something like Jeremy Lin, you're like, oh wow, that Cold War shit sure does go by the wayside once people can make some money. Marvel had no problem with the new Cold War with China.
You want to ask Enes Kanter about his opinion on that?
No.
Did he change his name to him now? Like he
freedom,
yeah. He's in his freedom. He was, he's fighting against Chinese labor and big China, and
it's funny because so remember the whole Cambodian thing or Laotian thing when you were dating that one girl at the mall or whatever, dude. Jeremy Lin, when he's making money for the NBA, is Chinese, but he's Taiwanese.
Facts.
And there's a whole political thing about that. And it's like, what do you claim? Like I always bring that up. It's like, why is Giannis the Greek freak? Isn't he Nigerian?
He's Nigerian, 100%.
So Jeremy Lin is not Chinese. He's American. But he's Taiwanese.
Will is telling a story about
he was dating a Laotian shorty.
She was very rough around the edges.
What does that mean?
Waz, let me tell you a little story about the Bay Area. Waz, you live in LA. That's California, but let me tell you about a different California. Okay, I'm from a place called Richmond, California. You go ask your LA friends about Richmond; they'll tell you. And I met a young lady at the mall, and she I think she's still alive, Laotian. Will would give me certain information about different Asian ethnicities. I will leave that off air. We'll have an off air conversation about that. And she lived on a worse part of town than me.
Wow.
So it was one of them things where it's like, I'm gonna walk you home. Like, we were kids, we were like 15, 16. I'm like walking her home, and I'm like, damn, you live past this street, huh? Okay, we gonna keep walking. And she was walking real comfortable. I'm walking like this, head on a swivel, and she's like hella comfy, right? And then this dude, a grown man. You know how ghettos be. Grown man come out of nowhere on a bicycle. And she just looked up. She was like, Marcus, old punk ass nigga, you better not be talking.
That's fantastic. That is awesome.
Oh. I was collecting my pearls all over North Richmond, walking this young lady home, and she was cursing out Negroes, talking shit to hoes. She was so ghetto.
Yeah, nah, we don't really got those types in New York. All the Oh, China, we do have that in Queens. We do have that. That exists. That exists in Queens, but that's not really a common type of Chinese cat that you meet, to be honest. And I've met China Mac a few times. He's a great guy. But he's a different type of cat. And then, you know, like Filipinos everywhere are like vaguely kind of black. And it's the same thing in New York.
Hey, you're talking about half of my children. Talking about all of Will's nieces and nephews.
But like when you meet, you know, Korean homies who live in like Little Neck or whatever, like they suburban and just like suburban as hell. You know what I mean?
Just the whole diaspora thing. Like anytime anything happens with Asian people in relation to black people, all my Asian friends want to ask me questions. It's different. Like there's different types of Asians. You can't just like real quick. We have enough time to talk about that Asian kid that got punched in the face at the basketball tournament a couple years ago during the pandemic.
Yeah, we'll wrap with this. Yeah.
Oh, I thought you was gonna talk about when Georgetown got their asses whooped.
Oh no, that was a whole
Chinese brothers.
That was the Chinese Liberation Army team.
Wow.
Of China. That was a whole different story. No, but like it was a tournament when the pandemic, when they first started kind of opening back up, and the whole Stop Asian Hate thing, and there was a situation where it got caught on tape where right in Oakland there was a basketball tournament and Asian kid got stolen in the face, right? So all these Asian people kept asking me, it's like, because you know I'm involved with basketball and I'm involved with the blacks, so so they're asking me, I'm like, bruh, I don't think it was a racial thing. Oh, but they were saying stuff during the game because that's basketball. Right?
That's what happened.
Never happened. Never. People don't talk shit in sports.
But what happened was, this is what I said. So I have a Facebook post where I broke down the whole situation, but I used very consistent terms. When I talked about the black kids, I would start talking about the yellow kid. And a lot of the Asian people, my Asian friends, were like, why are you calling them yellow? Why are you so comfortable using black? Right? We can go by national origin, citizenship, color, just be consistent. But I was saying if you watch the whole play, the first thing that happened was two guys dove for the ball, Asian kid and a black kid. And when they're coming up, the Asian kid kind of pushed the guy's arm off of him. It's a basketball play, right? And then the black dude kind of pushed them back, and they got face to face, right? So they join, whatever. No one wants to fight, but they're kind of chest out on each other. Another couple plays later, one of the kids fell down, and the Asian kid kind of stood over him, taunting him a little bit, right? It's a basketball thing, but what's supposed to happen is one of the other guys, his teammates, is supposed to come and shove him off. That's fine. That's what happened. But when that happened, the Asian kid walked up, with his fist balled up. And I was like, that's the moment the fight started, and he didn't know. He walked up to a dude that's trying to break it up with your fist balled up. So when he walked up to him, the kid pushed him, like, get off me. He's helping his teammate up. And then he went back at him again, but this time with a little more velocity, and the dude just punched him. So do I think there was some racial comments during the game? Yeah, it's basketball. It's like we just had the first white kid I've coached at Oakland High just transferred in like 2 months ago.
Oh, Jesus.
So he played with us for the first time. And it's so funny because we're in the van, and like I had to actually like just do my due diligence as an adult. It's like, hey, you cool with them calling you white boy? It's like, yeah, like that's what I am. Right? Like, like in a different situation, it'd be different. But like, hey, they make fun of me. Like my GPS is in Cantonese right now. So when I drive, it's just June's all, right? Whatever. But it's like a lot of stuff happens during a basketball court. It's nothing personal. But it's very personal because it's a personal game.
When I played varsity football, we played against this team in Staten Island, my senior Farrell. And for people who not familiar with Staten Island, a lot of what they call ethnic whites, Italians and Irish people or whatever, but a lot of Italians. And yeah, they called us niggers. They did. They did. They did. The Pharaoh kids called us niggers.
Mm.
And it was just like, it's football. What you gonna do? We're fighting anyway.
Light them up, right? You gotta light cats up.
I mean, that's the thing is like you just go for like you just wait for your play.
Dude,
And like that's the thing too, it's like, and then that's where it's like if you know a dirty game, shit was talking that there's a blowout, but at the fourth quarter, those last few minutes were just like the dirtiest. Those were the dirtiest part of the football game.
Dr. Claw
for me.
called them seasoned crackers.
Now that shit happened during a basketball game a couple years ago during a summer game where white kid called one of our kids the N-word, and we always tell our kids, we'll always have your back, just finish the game and don't act a fool. So we finished the game, we're shaking hands, and our other coach basically was like, "Hey, excuse me, you want to talk to Amari outside? Like, he wanted to clarify what you called him." Crickets. Right? So I was like, "Yeah, we didn't forget, but let's just finish the game, and then we'll deal with it when we deal with it."
Well, see, like my senior year of high school when I played football, like I played in Northeast, and like football is religion.
Mm-hmm.
It's more important than church. Hill towns. So, we had a weird, I guess cultural makeup there, right? And our quarterback, we ran because we were a school, and Jack was a black dude. And I'll never forget this because I think he's in prison because the dude dropped an N-bomb and went in on his family, and he's like, "All right, man, I got you after the game." And dude, my stabbing him like 16 times behind the bus.
Oh, Jesus.
Let him bleed
Christ. Out. Holy shit.
Are you from Youngstown? Are you from Youngstown, Bang?
And on that
Warren,
note,
baby, Warren.
God damn.
I bet, man.
And that seems like the whole time I was thinking about Maurice Clarett, like when you talk about like the players that like are never going to be able to make it because they have their shot, that the era of like professionalism is just like in. But Maurice Clarett like won the national championship for Ohio State and ended up getting busted riding a motorcycle with a guitar case full of vodka.
It's Maurice Clarett is the again, that era is over. I can just legalize my way into the NFL and it'll be fine. Like, no, that I'm telling you, kids are too brand conscious now. I watched an Instagram video of a high school kid that signed a big NIL deal in Southern California. He's a quarterback, I guess. He was dripped out in all streetwear shit, and he wasn't even playing in pads most of the clips. It was him doing like 7-on-7 shit and throwing kind of almost trick looking passes. And I was like, this is what I keep talking about with this shit. It's all about Instagram and product placement. And these kids know Instagram and product placement.
When the schools, the colleges, their business, the marketing departments they're now going to have a integrated athletics program, right? Where you go to fucking training, but then you go and you get like tips on YouTube and social media, and then get some of the finance and shit like that. They're going to turn it into the pipeline.
It's a different. I think it's going to be a different game, especially when it comes to smaller schools. You won't have to go. Everyone's not going to have to go to Alabama to get shot.
No, they have to go to Alabama. They can't go to Jackson State. They have to go to Alabama.
No, you can go to Jackson State because you can go to Jackson State and still have just as many Instagram followers.
Cheating.
What'd you say?
It'd be cheating if they go to Jackson.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the Dion is kind of shocking me with what he's doing with some of these black colleges, and I just see the ability to stay in your local market where you already have a following and have even mildly skilled people pitch you on the fact, well, hey man, build your following here, your base is already here, your home base is here. Like, how many athletes does California lose to the Southeast right now in all sports?
Shoot,
You don't have, you're not going to lose them anymore when you're in the number 1 or number 2 media market in the country. I don't know. Wasn't in Cali was when USC was dominating in football, which actually led them to even get a few decent basketball teams out of those years. Everybody was playing at SC. All them cats stayed.
Yeah.
That's where
They did a lot of-
homeboy from Antioch that went. That's with the Steelers. What's his name? Najee.
Najee Harris.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, he wasn't thinking about going to Cal.
for sure.
I mean, you know, the people that went to Cal were guys that, you know, weren't getting recruited hard enough at SC. Like Deshaun Jackson. That's an LA dude. He's not a Bay dude.
Yeah.
So, you know, I look at it like it's going to change the game in a whole different way. And I'm really interested to see what happens with basketball too, because like we talked about, so many kids from the East Coast that go to all these different schools in the Southeast as well, like Duke and North Carolina. Are they going to have to leave? Can they stay somewhat local? Are you going to see a rise?
Coaches retiring?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the kicker, is as we see hands like Krzyzewski, you know, Roy Williams, as they step back, how do the new gap, not just with wins on the court, but how do they balance, you know, the NIL stuff? How do they make it it's
going to take it? That's why they have to go, because this new paradigm, we don't know what it looks like yet, because we haven't seen the first NIL athlete. And the first NIL athlete is not going to be the guy that goes to the NFL or NBA. He's going to be the guy that can make a career that's maybe not a super blue chip recruit. I mean, with sports like football, you know, I'm a bigger football guy than I am a basketball guy. With the sport like football, there's so many guys that are big time guys that go to the school. Like, oh, he was a big time player in Arizona. And he goes to ASU, or maybe he even goes to Oklahoma State or Oklahoma University, right? And it's like, well, you don't really have that same base that you had there. The coach doesn't like you, you flame out. Well, what happens if you were to stay locally in your Arizona environment? And even if you don't even start on the team, you still have had that that influence, because you're being trained as an influencer at a very young age. And now even though you're not even the starter, you might have the hottest Instagram. How do you market that? How do you change that? That I think is how that game is going to look a little bit different for the guys that aren't super duper duper stars. Super duper duper stars are always going to get money thrown at them, but it's how does the third tier guy that still is like a well-known athlete. There's how many well-known stars are on Ohio State, Marcus and Mac?
Whew.
Like,
I mean,
Ohio legends.
We
right?
have them at many positions, Jason. CJ's got to start. You know, we've got Marvin Harrison Jr. Marcus, who was
Marvin Harrison's kid plays at Ohio State.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
The top, and then today, Ohio State receiver for the class of 23 today. So,
well, see, that's like the thing that I think, you know, like what Jason might be going to is like if there's going to be like these things that are like tangentially related to sports, that athletes probably end up just like offshooting off to, because it's like going to just be a lot more, like they have a lot more control. They're going to consider themselves entertainers and not necessarily athletes. Oh, you know, and like, you know, I don't know if there's like those like trick shot videos on YouTube or whatever the fuck. God. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm seeing some version of that with a little mix of like shit. What was that, like the street hoops or whatever the shit?
And
like,
one,
you know, like it's gonna be, you know, like there's gonna be some version of that, you know, which like that like someone can go with their Oculus and do some 3D shit. I don't know, right? But it's gonna be weird. But and that's it. I don't know.
You have access. That's another thing. Like, if you played at a D1 college and you played at all these D1 camps that we're talking about, we know these kids have access to all these other dudes. I've been kind of watching it with some of these guys that we call washouts or busts on the college level. They have pretty large YouTube platforms. And one of the cats, he was a big time recruit at out of Washington State, and he went to SC, flamed out. Then he went to Pitt, transferred to Pitt, and then injured himself. Never made it. He was a #1 quarterback recruit. Just never really, shit didn't work out for him. He's got a massive social media following, and people love watching him break down film. You know,
I mean, man, if you can flip it, you got to.
some kid's gonna get smart with that and be like,
It's better than being a used car salesman 5 years later.
there's a whole basketball subculture on YouTube of these marginal former high school, low college, or even a couple guys that never even played high school ball, but they play each other. They'll play 1-on-1, 2-on-2, and so player A will play player B. Then player A will react to the video of them playing each other and get a million views. Then player B will react to his reaction and get a million views. And off of one-on-one game, they got like 6-7 videos that each get a million views, and they're making great money. And they're not even good basketball players, but they're entertaining personalities.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
That to me that's gonna be the future with this shit. But I know it's late. Thank you guys so much for coming on. Will, thank you for joining us. Waz, I got to bring you back with Pascal so you guys can.
Of course. And Will, Nate Jones, Dame's guy, is my man. That's my close homie. That's my man. So I root for Dame. I love seeing his success. Easy cat to root for. Just one of the dopest dudes in the league to follow and pay attention to, because he's not like a insanely diva, crazy person like a lot of these dudes are.
Yeah, no, you should have seen his interview, because he came to our game on Friday. And so they did an interview with him, and I didn't see it until I got back to the hotel. And they were like, "Oh, which prospects are you here to see?" And he's like, "I'm here to watch my high school team. My coaches them now." It was real, just like whatever. But no, Nate is my dude. I like Nate a lot.
Peace out, y'all.
Thank you guys very much, Marcus, Mac. It's always a pleasure. This was a lot of fun. And Will, again, belated happy birthday. We are out.